Hello, this is Dr. Bond. I'm going to continue talking about bipolar problems this time, and I'm going to be talking about what we can do to help them as well. Previously, I've mentioned that the essential problem with bipolar emotions is that they are excessive or magnified emotional responses to life situations in excess of what the situation would trigger. For example, 1 ounce of loss would trigger a pound of grief in a bipolar person. 1 ounce of good fortune might trigger a pound of irrational exuberance. A minor slight, an ounce of a slight, can produce a pound or a ton of resentment or anger in a bipolar person. So it's the magnification that gets us into problems with bipolarism. There are many areas in which bipolar things cause problems. First of all, it causes problems in the body. I mentioned earlier that bipolar is a brain issue, it's a genetic issue, but the brain and the mind and the emotions are also connected to a physical and a muscular self. This is a very important connection because many people, especially people who have a sense of social or physical vulnerability, are not comfortable with the basic emotion of anger or resentment because it threatens their security, their dealings with other people, their relationships. And very often we find that in situations that might lead to conflict or difference of opinion or criticism, creates a lot of tension and bracing, which actually can lead people to have anxiety issues or even panic issues because the body is in a sense of threat, bracing itself, and it's very hard for people to understand that that bad feeling they feel when they're anxious has a lot to do with the muscular system of the body, with the bracing of the body, the brain being connected to the huge amount of muscles. We are really 50% of us is a rack of meat, just like a butcher store, and there are billions and billions of muscle fibers that brace themselves when we feel a sense of threat. The connection between the muscles and the brain is through the spinal cord and the central nervous system, and there's a continual traffic of messages going back and forth. So bracing in times of threat and anxiety is one of the problems that is associated with strong emotional responses. Bipolar emotions certainly get us into trouble in dealing with relationships. Here, a couple of people facing each other, encountering each other, and people with bipolar emotions really often have a lot of sensitivity to what other people are doing to them or saying to them, are relating to them. And a problem here is that the person with strong emotions, the bipolar person, very often is so consumed with the pain or the distress of his own emotions or her own emotions that they're not aware, often not aware, of the emotions of the other person. They're very keen on what the other person's doing to them, but usually have difficulty seeing the impact of their emotionality and their strong emotionality and their suddenly triggered emotionality on the other person. So the bipolar person, in their pain and their distress, is not aware that they're causing threat and pain and distress in the other person if they are failing to see the other person as a separate person with situations of their own and needs of their own. How we impact as bipolar people on other people is a very important issue, and understanding that is a very important issue. Also, bipolar emotions lead people to frustration when we have quick responses of disappointment when things aren't going well. We have a disappointment, or we have we're struggling to learn something new. If we have bipolar emotion, it's frequent that we are impatient with ourselves and angry with ourselves, and often there's an interference with persistence and being able to organize oneself to respond to a difficulty. Bipolar issues can, of course, affect relationships in business and with bosses, and it really gets in the way of living. We live in a social world, and we have feelings about our place in the social world, the messages we get in the social world. I have a picture of a beauty contest here, which I think is representative of the physical images, the ideal physical images that are so prevalent in this society. You know, there's such an economic need to motivate people to want to purchase stuff, and we may not realize it, but we're constantly being flooded with images of physical perfection, of materialistic perfection, or physical prowess that affect our lives and impact on us when we're very young. And very often there's a feeling of, you know, hey, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not strong enough, I don't have as much stuff, I'm not tough enough. And the insecurity that comes from television, magazines, images everywhere, impacts and makes us dissatisfied with ourselves. Now, this is great for the economy because we want to go out there and buy stuff, and people who sell stuff make a lot of sales. But the impact on our psyches can be one of a lot of dissatisfaction and pain and distress. Now, if you're bipolar, remember, everything is magnified. Bipolar emotion means magnified emotion. So dissatisfaction with oneself is even heightened if you are bipolar. Now, this can be a vicious cycle because the more distress that you feel about your life, the more you're tempted to escape from that painful feeling. Alcohol is everywhere. Drugs, especially the opiates, prescription medications based on derivatives of opium, give a feeling of relief from the painful feeling of bipolarity, which is a mixture of sadness and resentment. Of course, when you start getting into these substance escapes, you run into illegality, you run into DUIs, you run into criminality, you run into physical dependency on substances. If you go to substances and you're bipolar, and most people who have substance abuse problems have bipolar tendencies, if you fall into that trap, you have a major complication to your innate bipolar issues. You can escape other ways, just video games. The idea is that if you're in too much pain to deal with the situation that you're in, it's very easy to develop dysfunctional habits that aggravate your emotional problem to begin with. What's to be done? These are the problems that bipolar people get into. But bipolarity, as I mentioned earlier, look, extra emotions can often be assets. They can often be areas of intuition that help you to size up situations better if you're not upset and if you understand what your emotions are telling you. And the key thing about understanding bipolar emotions is to find words to describe what we're feeling. People with strong emotions who have access to words, the sad, mad, and glad that I've spoken about in the past, that the basic emotions of have words and that they connect to life experiences. And if we can put into words what our feelings are and what the experiences are that they connect to, we get a lot of power and empowerment to our bipolar tendencies. First of all, when we start to write, writing is like we're talking to somebody. Writing, and even people who use prayer, or people who see counselors, they are taking their emotion that's caused by distress in life, and they're finding words to communicate it, to make it understandable, to take it outside themselves, to remove the pressure on themselves, to share it externally, either with what we're writing or with how we're speaking. So the development of the words to make sense of our strong and painful emotions help to relieve us and help to explain us to other people. People who don't have words for their bipolar emotions are in the trap of, when their emotions get too strong, of blurting their feelings out in ways that are just feel like an attack on the person we're talking to. But if we can find the words to convey, explain what our issues are, the other person doesn't feel attacked, and we make a friend of the other person instead of an adversary. So being able to communicate, finding the words, how do we do that? We should write. Writing and journaling is something that people should do frequently. It doesn't have to be Shakespeare, it doesn't have to be beautiful words. In fact, the simpler the words that we use, the better in conveying emotional understanding. But we should be writing frequently, and the more we have emotional issues, the more we need to write, the more we need to develop our ability to communicate what we feel. If we do that, we have a chance to have a lot better relationships, because the people around us don't feel attacked by us, they understand what our issues are. We can communicate, we can negotiate what our needs are, we can negotiate compromise between our needs and their needs. But without finding the words, unfortunately, if we have bipolar issues, we are trapped in an emotional storm. And sometimes the storm can be of tsunami proportions. One of the other things in managing bipolarity better is getting some control over our day and night cycle. Bipolar chemistry is very, very sensitive, and nature works best when we have a rhythm of being asleep at the same time, being awake at the same time. It helps our brain to work optimally. In fact, people who have strong bipolar tendencies have attacks of bipolar excess triggered by sleep deprivation, by not having a good night's sleep, or even by traveling to a different time zone and having to be in Philadelphia Standard Time while you're visiting Italy. Your brain is in Philadelphia, your body is in Italy, and there is confusion, and it's upsetting to the brain chemistry. In order to develop good sleep habits, we have to find good ways of anchoring our evening routine, of writing out our thoughts that may be disturbing us, disturbing our sleep, so that we get it off of our minds, so that we can sleep knowing that we can pick up the issues tomorrow. It's also important when we are preparing for sleep to develop a plan for tomorrow, a roster for tomorrow. Because if we wake up and we don't have a way of organizing our time, we wake up really feeling attacked and threatened by the fact that we have a lot of things to do and no plan with which to do them. When we're in school, we get rosters. We know where we're going to be each time during the day. If we're employed, our boss tells us when we have to be somewhere. But if we have free time, or if we're retired, if it's a weekend, then our time is unstructured, and people with bipolarity need to schedule their time and create rosters for their free time. The more that we understand the things that trigger our bipolarity, the better we'll be able to cope. If you're not sure that you're bipolar, ask yourself, are you somebody who has a short fuse? Are you somebody who has surges of hair trigger emotional reaction? Do you come from a family with people who are emotional? Do you want to use substances to escape from painful feeling? Are there lots of people in your family who do? These are clues to a bipolar problem. As I said, some people have moderate, some people have extreme, but everybody who has bipolar issues has a problem that can complicate their lives, can make their lives very, very, very difficult, or they can learn to manage it and they can construct a life one day at a time. And they can actually use the benefits of their bipolar sensitivity to advance themselves in this world and to have a satisfactory life. Thank you very much for your attention.